Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire. Welcome. It is time to continue talking about anime series and using them in your BESM game, developing them into BESM worlds for you to play with. I have, of course, two more from the summer 2016 season, and I've moved back, finally, to the summer 2015 season for a couple of anime from that one. So, hey, exciting. I've moved back a year in time for anime I want to talk about. But anyway, let's start with the two from the summer 2016. I'm going to be talking about Rewrite and Qualidia Code. So let's talk about Rewrite. So in the fictional Hazamatsuri city, we have high schooler Hutaro, and he has this nightmare about this girl killing him. Talking to his friends, because it has this supernatural tone to it, they tell him to seek out the school witch, the lone member of the Occult Research Society. Along the way, he ends up encountering a different dimension, monsters, the paranormal, and this entire situation ends up with him joining the Occult Research Society with the other member, Akane, who is indeed the school witch. Now, there is more to this entire storyline, but I don't want to dive into it because it gets into the spoiler territory. You'll probably get a little hints of that with my BESM part of it, but again. Anyway, so the genres for this one are action. There's battle scenes between monsters, paranormal things. There's the fight scenes with people that have abilities that they end up fighting with each other. Fantasy. There are monsters, other dimensions, paranormal creatures, people with amazing powers. Makes it very fanciful. But it is also a romance. It was based upon a visual novel, meaning that there was roots for different girls. All the different female characters that end up in the series, in the actual game, you could pursue any of them as a romantic interest. Hence, there's this romantic overtones. There, in fact, will be a second season of this coming up early next year that will be taking different routes. So this first season, technically it's one big season, but this first part of it that's out only takes up the route of one of the girls. I won't tell who, but, you know, one of the girls is the primary romance. There's other romance routes that will be shown. Now I rate this one a 3. It has some very interesting concepts, it is very entertaining, but I just never dove into it as much as I guess other people could have. Now let's talk about using it in the BESM game. Now I would give your players 300 points if you're in this. Make them members of the Occult Research Society, and they go on looking for paranormal creatures, figuring out strange things going on in the schools when each of them does have their own abilities, hence why they have the points. Now, you could keep it very simple like that, or you could make it a little more complex if you chose to, and dive into the alternate dimension and the conflict between the guy and the guardian. That's entirely up to you if you want to dive into this conflict that exists, or if you just want to keep it simple and have it to just the Occult Research Club portion of it. I would recommend if you do go for the conflict in the alternate dimension, you add a few NPCs to the club and just don't have it your players, because then you want one of those to be the earthly familiar, rather than one of the players be it, because it makes it more interesting when they end up in this situation where the players have to make choices about another character in the group rather than one of each other. It's a little easier to play off of that than it would be that the other players have it. So let's move on and let's talk about Qualidia Code. Humans get into this war with this enemy known as the Unknown. The war isn't going very well, so they decide to cryogenically freeze a number of children in hopes to keep them safe for the future. They do so, and years later, decades later in fact, these children are woken up and they have found to develop these special powers known as the World. With this ability, they can fight against the Unknown. So now they're growing up and entering into the high school phase, which is where we take our main characters, and we have them fighting against the Unknown, battling them out to protect Japan from the invasion of them from the Tokyo Gate, where they enter in from. Now this is an action scene. They battle against the Unknown, they train with each other, things like that comes with fights. It's supernatural, because they gain supernatural abilities called the World that give them special abilities that they can fight against these monsters. But I would call it also a semi-apocalypse, because there is this world war that effectively goes on against the Unknown that has really taxed the world. They've been battling it out for decades, and it hasn't done very good for it. Think about a world at war for decades. It doesn't end up the best everywhere. There's still bastions of civilization, but a lot of it has crumbled from the degree that we would think about it. Not, you know, civilization has compressed inward. Now I rate this one a 4. I did like it a lot. There are some aspects of it that drew me away just in general principle, but I did enjoy most of it, and it drew me in pretty well. Now, if you're using this in your BESM game, it's going to be relatively simple. 450 points, and make your characters some of the children that were frozen. Put them in a setting that now they're in high school, like our characters from the anime. They are dealing with competing with each other, competing with the life they have in high school, competing with other schools and other groups within the school, try for rank and prestige, also dealing with the unknown that keep attacking and invading. You could ramp up some of the evasions with that. There are a lot of opportunities for storylines built around the fact that they've entered into this and they have their own world powers. That is what it is. They are children with world powers, and now you have to throw them into an ability where they're dealing with it. Either getting better at it, or battling against the monsters that will be coming for them. So there are 2 series now that I want to go over that they were in the summer 2015. One of them actually is a series, so it's been a couple of animes. There is Senki Zesshou Symphogear. That's the one that's been multiple series, so the 3rd season was the one that was in summer. And Rokka, Brave of the Six Flowers. Let's talk about Symphogear. So in this world 2 years ago, a pair of idols that were known as Zweiling were also fighting against these strange creatures called the Noise that were trying to attack and destroy humanity. In the ensuing chaos, a young girl, Hibiki, was being threatened, and one of the two gave up her life for Hibiki. Part of her Symphogear relic, the thing that gave her the power to fight the Noise, fractured off and embedded itself in Hibiki's chest. Now, 2 years later, Hibiki finds herself attacked by Noise and then awakens the power of the very Symphogear piece that's within her, and it makes her gain the abilities of the user that died for her, giving the power of Gungur, the same set of armor. She then begins to wield the power of song and fight with other Symphogear users to fight against the Noise and those that would be their masters. Now, of course, there are multiple seasons with different enemies and different takes on the Noise, and they do make new friends, other people that are Symphogear users, and other problems arise. But as I said, it's been 3 seasons, it's pretty decent. They may put out more, they may not. So this is an action, of course. They battle against these monsters, fight against them, try to save people, deal with the fact that there's these attacks. It is a science fiction. They're taking place in this sort of near future where the very things they use are sort of this ancient technology, it almost seems like, but also like hyper technology kind of thing. Interesting take on it, that it is that sci-fi kind of feel, yet feeling a little ancient. But of course I would also call it a magical girl. They transform! They get these almost vaguely supernatural powers, except they're really science-based powers. They gain abilities that are far beyond what you think would be normal. So it is this interesting take on a sci-fi magical girl, which they do have those, they just don't show up as much as normal magical girls would. Now I do rate this one only a 3. It's enjoyable, but again, it just has things about it that don't draw me in all the time. I do like a good series like this. It's a very interesting take on some of the things that they have. Interesting take on the idea of a magical girl. And that's why I think I enjoyed it a little more than I would some of the other series, because it was different. So if you're using this in your BESM game, I would give your characters 450 points. Make them Symphogear users. That's the easiest way of doing it. That they're going to be fighting against the Noise or organizations and battling with it. You could choose any one of the seasons of the anime to focus around for your basic storyline, or come up with one on your own. And you could keep and they're going to be using the powers of song and their Symphogear to fight against the Noise, of course. Now, you could make these characters have different backgrounds too. The fact is, you could try to go for the idol route, like with Tsubasa, and have them a team of idols, perhaps. Or you could keep it to more like Hibiki and be on the high school route and be a student. Or you could be something different. It seems like some of the characters mix and match between these. You have Chris, who has a different background entirely, who kind of starts more as an antagonist and eventually becomes a friend and ally. Whatever route you really want to choose for your characters, you can allow them to build a background that would suggest why they would have the Symphogear, because that's going to be very important that they design into their background. And it seems a lot of times there's always some kind of tragedy involved around it, so perhaps some of the flaws they're going to have are going to be built around the fact that they got their Symphogear, that it's going to be linked to them gaining it. Now let's talk about Rokka, Brave of the Six Flowers. So there are these 6 braves which are occasionally chosen by the goddess of fate to fight against the demon god and effectively put him down and keep him from gaining power. It's a cycle that continues to this day. At this point in time, once again the braves are called upon, but this time 7 assemble. So now there's this kind of tension between them as they believe one of them is actually an agent of the demon god sent to destroy them, but they don't know who. And that is where the tension and interest in this series comes in, because it's not just a fantasy fighting series. It has this kind of mystery and suspense about what's going on really in there, because there is someone that's effectively a fake, and why they are faking it. We take the eyes of Adlet Mayer, who's the self-proclaimed strongest man in the world. He is a man that has trained in order to fight against the demons, gained abilities from someone that was trained for battle, that was effectively a hero type, but originally wasn't going to pass his knowledge on. Adlet managed to convince him to do so. So this is an action, of course. They fight against demons. They have to battle it occasionally in amongst themselves when tensions break, and they get into combat. It is a fantasy. There are demons, monsters, special powers, magical abilities. The saints, which are the women in the group, have their own mystical abilities, while some of the men are really strongly trained in their own fanciful ways. Basically the fighter types. But it is also mystery. Because there is this mystery going on between them that you're always trying to figure out, and it seems like constantly one person or another is getting blamed, and trust is very hard, and they have to try to determine what the trust is and who's behind it and who's going on, and it's very interesting that way. I rate this one a 5. It was one of my favorites from the season, the one I really liked a lot. It drew me in with the mystery and the interest about it, and there was this kind of intrigue, yet keeping to that fantasy genre, which I enjoy quite a lot. Now for your characters, I would recommend 400 points when building your game. For the characters, make them one of the Braves. You're going to have a team of Braves. Make sure that you have enough players that you're going to have at least 1 or 2 NPC Braves for having 6. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take a similar situation. You're going to send them on this path where they have to travel and defeat the Demon King and accomplish a few tasks along the way, but have them be 7 of them. Here's where the tension comes in, that you're going to have a number of NPCs to fill up to the group on 7. That's why I'd recommend maybe 4 players at most, 5 if you really want to push it. But the thing is, even if you would do 6 or 7 players, choose randomly who the traitor is going to be. Even have that maybe one of the players is going to be the traitor, and let them know about it before the game starts. You're going to determine who really is the traitor, and then you will talk to them and work out why they would do that with their character after that. So you're going to determine randomly. So it might be the NPC or an NPC. It might not be. It could be one of the players. Because you're going to build it that way, and you're going to let people know that, it's going to be very interesting. There are plenty of ways you can have communications outside the game with someone that you can tell them all about being a traitor. So it seems like a very fun, interesting concept, and this is actually one of my favorite ones I've talked about. The fact that you don't know who's the traitor, while you still have to go on the classic sort of adventures that a lot of these characters would go on in the fantasy world, while still maintaining the fact that someone's trying to sabotage them, but it's really hard to tell who. So that's it for today. I talked about these 4 anime, I talked about giving some information on them, telling you how to use them in your BESM game. If you have any questions, comments, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.